If you're applying for disability benefits or help people that are, the path to success has never been more complicated. Welcome to the Disability Expert Podcast, where we tackle the difficult issues and interview the country's top experts to help you better navigate the disability process. Winning a disability case is hard and keeps getting tougher every day. We can't promise you'll win your case by listening, but we sure think it's going to help.
This really isn't that complicated. I mean, you want to win your case, don't you? Well, then listen to what I say.
Hello and welcome to the Disability Expert Podcast with Chad Brown, owner of Chad Brown Law. I am your host today. My name is Kevin Rosenquist. Chad's firm specializes in Social Security disability claims, federal appellate disability claims, and private long-term disability claims. Chad is a North Carolina board certified specialist in Social Security disability law and has been since 2010. I won't say it all though, because Chad, you're here. You can talk about yourself. Welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Hey, good to see you again. I'm excited.
Yeah, for sure. So I gave a real brief, broad strokes introduction there, but tell me a little more about your firm and what it is you guys do.
Sure. We basically are a specialty disability law firm. We do Social Security disability work. We help clients all the way from filing initial applications all the way through to, we have a niche federal appellate practice too, where we work not only with our clients if they, sometimes they lose, but also work with other lawyers' cases when they lose. We do a private long-term disability, which is, people often think it's the same. It's really different. Say you have a private disability policy through your employer, and they deny you. And so we do that in sort of two features. We help people both obtain benefits, and then we work with typically sort of professional people who have ongoing benefits to maintain their benefits. We work with them on a monthly basis. So, by and large, what we do, we specialize in Social Security disability work and then private disability work.
It seems very specific, very niche. How did you find this?
It's sort of funny. It's not like anybody goes to law school and says, "Hey, I want to be a disability lawyer." I'm sure there are people maybe around the world, maybe around the country somewhere that do, but that wasn't really my path. When I came out of law school, I went to UNC, born and raised in North Carolina, and I went to UNC Chapel Hill Law School, and I was going to be a trial lawyer when I came out, and I did. I was prosecutor, tried a ton of jury trials when I was really young. Moved back in Western North Carolina where I live, ended up doing criminal defense work. And honestly, I worked all the time, and I just woke up one day and said, I just don't even know if this is what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like being in court. I like trying cases, but it just seems like I'm not really making a real impact in people's lives. So my wife's uncle was friends with a guy who owned a law firm, named Jack Parton, who was a longtime Social Security disability lawyer. The more I learned about it, the more it made sense. Went to work with him back in 2004, and that's what I've done ever since. If you look at sort of my history, though, in my life growing up, it actually makes a lot of sense that I would have become a disability lawyer. I had an aunt growing up who had cerebral palsy, I literally watched my grandparents give their whole life to her. She died a couple years ago in her late 70s. I think her life expectancy was 15 when she was born, really a testament to my grandparents. Yeah, my mom was a social worker. Interestingly enough, like the elementary school where I went was where they worked with all the special needs kids in the county. So if you sort of look back, I had all of this interaction with people who were disabled. And then when I started doing the work, I really liked it. I said, this is meaningful work. It's not the highest paid. It's not the most glamorous, but at the end of the day, you have people who are really struggling, and you're able to make a real impact in their lives. And it's a lot more challenging than people think it is. Like a lot of lawyers sort of think it's sort of law light because it's administrative style trial work, but it really was intellectually challenging, especially the federal court work we do. And so I sort of went from being this young, disillusioned lawyer who thought he was going to be a trial lawyer to this maybe a little bit naive guy who thought he was going to change the world and help people who were struggling. But that's sort of how it ended up. And so I ended up doing disability work, and that's all I've really done since 2004.
Give us some examples of what kind of work it is you do. What are your day-to-day clients like?
Yeah, it's such a wide variety of clients that we work with. I think people have this idea that like the disabled person is maybe someone in a wheelchair or someone who has sort of catastrophic injuries. And for sure, we work with people like that, people who've had amputations or people who, end up with paralysis or end up, with those type issues. But it's really a full range, everywhere from folks with mental health problems, anxiety, depression, PTSD, helped a ton of vets over the years, even though it's a different system than the VA disability, all the way to full range of physical problems from back problems, heart problems, COPD, obesity, any sort of medical problem that could impact your ability to do full-time work. I've probably seen it. It used to be a joke. People would come in my office and they'd be like, "You've probably never represented anybody who has the issue I have." And I'm like, "Probably have."
Yeah, I don't even know need to know what it is. I have.
Yeah. But once a year, someone comes in and I'm like, "Yeah, you win the annual award for the one impairment I've never seen before." But by and large, really disability affects people in all ages and all walks of life, everywhere from factory construction workers who sort of broke their body down over time, people who end up with oddball diseases, they get cancer or they have, who knows, ALS or whatever it may be, just any sort of medical impairment that has an unusual amount of severity, puts someone in a position where they might not be able to work. And in that scenario, unfortunately, a lot of times people get denied. And so we work with people all along the spectrum in those disability cases.
That's so super interesting for sure. How do you feel like your experience as a prosecutor and in the defense area helps you in handling these cases?
It's interesting. When I first started doing administrative work, which is a little bit different, there's not an attorney on the other side. You're working with a judge who is supposed to be looking at, sort of your side as well as the side of what the government would be in terms of making a fair decision. They're non-adversarial proceedings. They seemed awful adversarial to me. It seemed like a lot of times the judge was your enemy. And I think that's still the case to some degree. It's probably not, it's not fair to paint all the judges in that stripe. But there are some who are sort of view it as their job to sort of defend the government and really sort of make sure this is a fair proceeding in terms of like an adversarial context. So, in those situations, obviously being a trial lawyer really helped because I was more than qualified to sort of engage in that level of back and forth. But I think the thing that probably correlates the most is just the fact that you really have to be a problem solver to be a good disability lawyer, because everything, there's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of moving parts. So you have not only the medical impairments that you're dealing with, you also have to deal with this wide range of jobs, because anybody, we have people that do almost any job you could imagine as well. And then you have this sort of complex set of regulations. And so for me, I think the trial work that I did as a young lawyer really prepared me to be able to sort of exhaustively think through different scenarios. How do you apply the law? How do you make the arguments? How do you really position your client correctly in the law? But also, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, there's evidence that's not helpful. You can't avoid that. You've got to be able to deal with it. And so as a former trial lawyer, you were used to the other side sort of bringing out the weaknesses in your case. In the administrative context, you really need to be able to do that, but you need to be able to see them on your own. So I think I was pretty prepared for that.
That's a really interesting point. You're able to see the weaknesses in your case because you remember how people would point out the weaknesses in your case. Yeah, so now you can see those for yourself, where someone who maybe doesn't have that trial experience wouldn't have that sort of radar to be able to find that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's really definitely interesting. So why is it that, you talked a little bit about how it makes sense that you've come into this world, but why is it such something that you've become so passionate about? Why do you think working with the disabled is such an important thing?
I think when you engage with people that are suffering a lot, you realize very quickly, and we see this in my law office, like in terms of hiring and the associates I have who work with me now in my firm who also do disability work. And you realize that there's sort of a group of people who really want to be a part of alleviating suffering. I think of them sort of like firemen. Like, you shouldn't be a fireman if you don't want to run into the fire. Like, that's a bad combination. Like, to be afraid to be a fireman is a bad combination. To be a disability lawyer and not want to engage in suffering is a bad combination. And for me, what happens is you find people really at their weakest time. They sometimes are helpless, they're hopeless, they're financially strapped. Usually they're dealing with real issues, physically suffering, pain, just mental anguish, and they're really fragile and their lives become unstable. And so for me, when you engage those people, you're able to step in and say, hey, how can we bring some stability back to your life? How can we, reestablish you financially so you can pay your bills? How do we help you get medical insurance so you can get the medical care that you need? How can we meet you where you are and say, you don't have to worry about this. You don't need to worry about this issue. You don't need to just obsess about this. You've got enough to worry about. You're suffering. You don't have to feel helpless. You don't have to feel hopeless. You're not worthless because you lost your job. Being able to just step in that space and meet people where they are, understanding how they're suffering, how they're in need, And for me, that's what it's about. Yeah, we have to understand all the medical problems. Yes, I understand a lot about the vocational world. I'm an expert. I'm a board certified specialist in disability law for almost 15 years. So I understand how the law works. But at the end of the day, a lot of people can do those things. The real question, I think, that you need to ask yourself if you're going to be in this space. And it's interesting, because on this podcast, we're going to bring in a lot of experts, and that's going to be a common theme. And I know, because I know these people, I work with them professionally for years, is that, what drives you day to day and allows you to get up and come to work in a frustrating space. I mean, you're dealing with one of the biggest government agencies that exist. It's often not very efficient. It's not run well. They make a lot of mistakes. They do stuff that doesn't make a lot of sense. Your clients are frustrated, and you're like, why does anybody want to do that? But for us, people who work for me, the associates who work for me, we see this as an opportunity to step into a space and alleviate suffering and bring stability back to people's lives. And that's what drives me. That's what drives us to show up every day and work when it's hard and deal with clients who aren't always in the best of moods. Sometimes they get frustrated. Sometimes they're frustrated with us. Usually they're just frustrated with the process and the system, but knowing you can make a difference in really make a difference in their lives. I mean, that's what drives us.
So this is the first episode of the show. We're introducing you, but going forward, what is your plan for this podcast? And also if you could speak to what prompted you to want to start this podcast, where does the desire to get all this knowledge and information out into the world come from?
It's really a couple of things. One, I served in leadership with NCAJ, which is equivalent to Trial Lawyers North Carolina Disability Section. I was president a number of years ago. I was in leadership. So I got to meet and work with a lot of the best lawyers in North Carolina over the years. And through that and through NOSCR, other organizations, get to know a lot of lawyers around the country. And one, it doesn't exist. Like, there's just not a space where the top experts come on and talk about the real issues that clients are facing. And this is a little bit, I don't know, this is something you have to understand marketing a little bit to understand. But one of my pet peeves is most of the information people receive now is on the internet. And the internet, I always like to say, is a blessing and a curse. There's lots of information, but there's very limited filtering of it. But what most people don't understand who don't do a lot of marketing is very often expert information is not actually created by experts on the internet. It's created by marketing companies who use that information to then sell your information in terms of leads to sort of mass mill national firms. So you have a situation where the average consumer goes online, they find information that they assume is expert information. It's really not. A lot of times it's average at best. And it's being used to gather their information for a purpose they don't really envision, which is really to align them with sort of a large marketing national firm. But the reality is most experts in the disability space are not producing online content. I mean, they're experts. They spend all their time in court.
Yeah, right.
They're all their time doing their work. And so the people who really have the opportunity to make the greatest contribution in sort of the information economy of the internet, if you will, aren't actually participating. And the people who are participating really don't know what they're talking about. Does that mean there's not good information on the internet? No, of course not. But a lot of the information that's there is not coming from expert sources. And the people who have the ability to provide that information, I mean, that's not what they do. They're experts. They're in the field every day in the trenches, just like we are. And so I sort of looked at it and said, what if we changed that? What if we said, let's bring these experts on. Let's talk about the real issues that clients are dealing with that we know as experts we deal with every day. Let's give them good advice, but also let's give them the opportunity to say who in Houston, who in Boulder, who in San Diego, who in Dallas, who in Raleigh, who in Charlotte, like who can I know is going to be a lawyer that we can go and interact with that can handle my case and give me the best chance of winning. And so you sort of have this unique situation where I don't believe the best information is out there, and the people who are able to provide the best information aren't maybe being showcased the way they need to, because I mean, it's not a marketing type space. Like this is not, most disability lawyers are in the space for the same reason I am. They want to engage with people and make this big difference in their life. They don't have time to sort of participate in the marketing world that sort of runs our shopping for services at this point. So I looked at it and said, hey, why don't we do it? Why don't we build a podcast? I know the experts. I know who they are. I understand the issues. And so we have an opportunity to get really good information out to people who need it. And at the same time, bring attention to a lot of people I know who don't have a lot of attention, like lawyers who really, that's really who you'd want. Like if you said, hey, my cousin or brother or uncle or mom or dad needs disability, who would you recommend? Like, it's not going to be who they find in the Google search. It's actually somebody they may or may not know of. So how do we draw attention to those people and bring people to them so that they really have the best chance of being able to win their case? Not that big firms don't always do a good job. Some of them do, but there's a difference between what an expert does and what sort of an average attorney does. And I think it makes a difference. And when you have everything at stake, you don't have any money to live, you have serious medical problems, you need insurance. Do you have the luxury of not finding the best person to help you? I just don't think you do. So that's sort of what we're trying to do.
I love it. That's really great. Tell me about your Medicare insurance agency. What does it do? What's your role and how did it get started?
Yeah. So I started back in 2018, as sort of a related business. We found that when you get Social Security disability, most of our clients go on Medicare. And one of the things we found was that similar to getting poor advice in the insurance side, they weren't getting, on the disability side, they weren't getting great advice on the Medicare side, because most Medicare agents deal with sort of, we call them 65 and over. So people who turn 65 come on Medicare in retirement, but yet a disabled individual has a more complex set of issues that they're dealing with on the insurance side. They have a lot of doctors, they have a lot of medications, they have a lot of complexity, and they're the ones who need to make sure they get the correct insurance advice. And so 2018, we started a specialty insurance company called CBIG. I'm the president of it now. We work almost exclusively with Medicare beneficiaries who are on Social Security disability. We work with attorneys all over the country, and it's been a real blessing as well, because now we sort of we work people through the first piece, getting them financial stability. But a lot of people apply for disability really just because they want the insurance. It's really not even about the money. They need to get the medical care they need, and they need insurance to do that. And so being able to step in, okay, we've stabilized your life financially. Now we've been able to find ways to actually make sure we optimize our medical insurance. So at the end of the day, we're able to walk away and say, this person came to us in really sort of an unstable place, and we were able to stabilize it as much as we could, give them hope, get them back on solid ground so that they can move forward and really have the highest quality life possible.
That's really cool. So you've got basically two different business ventures. You've got a wife, 4 kids, and 3 dogs, and now you want to add a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it's ambitious.
You don't like sleep, do you?
Yes, on the weekends, but it's one of those things where there's a lot of synergy in what we do. Obviously we work with a lot of lawyers, and we have a federal appellate practice, and we work with other lawyers. And so we work with some of them in insurance, and the client base is similar. So on the insurance side, it's very easy to train agents to understand sort of the intricacies of our clients, because we've already engaged them with those on the disability side. So yeah, it's a lot, but at another level, there's enough overlap and expertise that I think it makes a lot of sense. But at the end of the day, I look at these people who come to us and they need help, and that's what we're here for. So that's what, ultimately that's sort of what brings you joy, is being able to engage with people and make their lives better. And if we can do that in a very limited sphere, which it is, I'm not necessarily changing people's lives, but in the context of dealing with their disabilities, getting financial security, getting their insurance right. I mean, we in that limited space, we do a good job.
It's really cool, and admire your passion, and it's definitely very apparent. And I'm looking forward to seeing what's coming up on the Disability Expert podcast with Chad Brown. Chad, really, really happy that you were here to kind of introduce what the show is going to be, introduce a little bit more about you, and really looking forward to seeing how this show progresses as it goes.
Hey, thanks a lot. Good seeing you again.